to come. Hold it in the sun. Don't know what you got till it's gone. Hold it in the sun. All of the best yet to come. Throw it open, all the curtains wide. Not gonna miss a thing. Nothing's promised to you in this life, but it's there for us to take. So live well before we break.
I'm Nancy, and it is 3:33 in the afternoon on 10/29, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate all y'all. Please hit that thumbs up. I changed incense. I was doing sage, and I loved sage. Now this is called Nag Champa, okay? Well, it's too flowery and musky. I don't really like it. I think I'll put that. What's it remind me of? I don't know, but I don't like it. I'm gonna go get some sage and put. I don't like this. Okay, anyway. So, I've got one video from Crime Zone that talks to Mama Candace, and then the rest of the videos that we're going to watch are from Crime Veil New, and I just recently discovered him. And he has been following the Summer Wells case like from minute one. So I looked at some of his videos, and I think we can gain a lot from what his research is. So let's look. I'm sorry if I got barbecue sauce on my face. We just had barbecue ribs for supper. All right.
Home when you first come home.
I'm not doing all that. I'm not going all the way back. I can't do this.
So listen,
All right.
they're trying to help. They're trying to help.
It's not helping me.
I know, but it,
Know what happened to Summer?
No.
Do you know who took Summer?
No.
home when you first come home.
I'm not doing all that. I'm not going all the way back. I can't do this.
So listen,
All right.
they're trying to help. They're trying to help.
It's not helping me.
The gentlemen that are interviewing her are from a YouTube channel called I Know and I Don't Like It. So they're from the Deception Panel, where they analyze people. So
I know, but they might.
There's nothing more to remember. I gotta go home.
How does a child disappear without a trace? How does a mother look away for just a moment, only to turn back and find her child gone, with no sign of where they went, or why? On June 15, 2021, 5-year-old Summer Wells vanished from her home in Rogersville, Tennessee, without a single clue left behind. Her disappearance marked the beginning of a case that would captivate the nation. Yet, more than 2 years later, no one has been able to answer the most haunting question of all. What happened to Summer? This isn't just another missing child case. Summer's story stands out because of how it challenges everything we think we know about safety, trust, and the unknown dangers that lurk even in the most familiar places. For the Wells family, it was a day like any other, until it wasn't. Candace Wells, Summer's mother, was planting flowers with her daughter in the front yard. A peaceful moment shared between mother and child.
I almost passed out from a mold reaction in my own basement. My hospital-grade HEPA filter was running right next to.
But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Summer's disappearance was swift. It defied logic. No struggle, no cry for help, nothing. The investigation has been sprawling, with search teams combing through dense woods. But despite thousands of tips, no physical evidence, no witnesses, and no solid leads have emerged. What we do know is that Summer's case has revealed gaps in the investigation, contradictions in statements, and unanswered questions that continue to haunt the community. As we dig deep into this case, we'll examine the timeline that began on that warm summer morning, unravel the investigation's twists and turns, and
Okay. How long this video is? 43 minutes. I'm not going to watch all of it. See if there's something new.
peaceful, a typical start to the day. The family had no reason to expect that this normalcy would soon be shattered. The sun was high in the sky, casting light over their small home on Ben Hill Road, the kind of setting that often gives the illusion.
Said, watch Summer, I'll be back. And within 2 minutes I came back. And I asked the boys where their sister was, and they said, she went downstairs, Mom, to play with her toys in the playroom.
Candace said she hadn't heard any screams or cries for help, and there were no signs of a struggle. This was crucial information, but it also raised more questions than answers. Summer's father, Don Wells, who arrived home shortly after the call to authorities, expressed his concern. The Wells family had no history of child neglect, and there was...
Now, from what I understand, it was one of their neighbors that called and said that Candace, or that Summer was missing. It wasn't Candace. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that's what I remember hearing.
No evidence of any unusual behavior leading up to the disappearance. The scene around the house was undisturbed, and the family had not reported any suspicious activity prior to that day. As law enforcement began their investigation, they focused on Summer's surroundings and began questioning those closest to the family. Summer's siblings were at home when she went missing, but they were too young to provide substantial testimony. Hunter, a 15-year-old family friend, had been with Candace earlier in the day, helping with errands and playing in the water. His involvement in the search was crucial, but his exact movements that afternoon were unclear. He had left the Wells home before the situation escalated, but his role in the unfolding timeline raised suspicions. The timeline from 3 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. became a key focus for investigators. This was the period in which Summer was last seen, and while Candace's search for her daughter was frantic, it seemed as though the rest of the house and its surroundings held no answers. No unusual sounds, no disturbance, and no witnesses had seen anything out of the ordinary.
Okay. I don't know who this guy is.
TBI agents and local law enforcement kept searching, but with each passing hour, the mystery deepened. Was Summer lost in the woods, or was something more calculated behind her disappearance? With no physical evidence to guide them, the investigation into Summer's disappearance had stalled, leaving only one certainty. The questions that haunted the Wells family would continue to haunt the investigators as well. The disappearance of Summer Wells has left many with lingering questions that have spawned a multitude of theories. The investigation into her whereabouts has explored several possibilities, each with its own set of challenges and unanswered elements. With no concrete evidence or leads, law enforcement The public, and experts alike, have been forced to consider various scenarios. What happened to Summer Wells on that fateful day? Did she wander off into the woods, or was something more sinister at play? One of the most widely discussed theories is that Summer was abducted. From the very beginning, law enforcement acknowledged the possibility that someone may have taken her, though no signs of a struggle were found at the scene. This absence of physical evidence became both a key point and a mystery in the case. If she had been abducted, why were there no signs of a forced entry, no disturbances in the house, and no obvious trace of a struggle? The idea of abduction raised even more unsettling questions. Was Summer taken by someone familiar to her, someone she knew and trusted? Or was it a stranger, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment? The fact that there was no direct evidence of an abduction has left many to wonder if Summer's disappearance was a planned event, with the perpetrator taking great care to avoid leaving behind any trace. If someone close to Summer was involved, it would suggest a deep understanding of how to operate in such a way as to leave no obvious signs behind. Psychological experts have suggested that close family members or individuals within the family's circle could have been the ones who orchestrated the events leading up to her disappearance. This theory is particularly chilling because it touches on the idea of betrayal and familiarity.
So they're thinking, one theory is they're thinking that the family got together and conjured up this idea and this plan as to what was going to happen to Summer. That don't seem right. And what are they standing on that they're taller than the electric lines? That don't make no sense. Anyway, okay, let's go.
Someone close to Summer who may have gained her trust, only to cause her harm. The concept of wandering off is another plausible theory. Summer loved the outdoors and was often seen playing outside, both in the yard and the surrounding wooded areas. It's not uncommon for children to wander off, especially when they are curious about their surroundings. The Wells family lived in a rural, secluded area, surrounded by dense woods, and it is possible that Summer, out of curiosity or desire to explore, walked further than she intended. In this theory, Summer could have gotten lost in the woods and was unable to find her way back. However, this scenario has its own set of challenges.
Some moms want to build income from home. They just don't want to post, pitch, or be online all the time. That's
The fact that search dogs lost her scent within yards of the house raises questions. How could Summer's scent vanish so quickly? Was it possible that she simply got lost? Or was there something else at play? Adding to this, neighbors reported hearing a scream around 5:30 p.m. on the day Summer disappeared. Jody Sue Brown, a neighbor of the Wells family, described hearing a scream that she thought was unusual. She immediately thought something was wrong but didn't know what. Law enforcement dismissed this scream as unrelated to Summer's disappearance, but it remains one of the most unsettling aspects of the case. Could this scream have been a sign of a struggle, or was it just an innocent sound from the environment? The decision to dismiss it has left many wondering if this lead could have been significant. Could the scream have been connected to a struggle or a possible abduction?
Possible.
Summer's disappearance remained open. Authorities had yet to formally charge anyone with involvement in the case, and law enforcement continued to work in search of any new leads that could break the case wide open. In the meantime, Tennessee's legal system found itself grappling with the intersection of criminal and child welfare law, as both custody and child protection issues became central to the public discourse surrounding Summer's case. While the legal challenges continued to mount for the Wells family, the investigation itself remained at a standstill. Law enforcement officials were still pursuing every possible lead, but had made no major breakthroughs. As time passed, the possibility of a trial seemed increasingly distant. Instead, the case had become mired in public speculation, with many people wondering if the truth would ever emerge. In parallel to the family's legal troubles, child welfare agencies had to address concerns about how the case was handled from a procedural standpoint. Critics questioned the effectiveness of the response by both law enforcement and the Department of Children's Services. Was enough done to protect Summer and her siblings before she went missing? Could earlier intervention have prevented this tragedy? Or had the Wells family been failed by the very system meant to protect them? The lack of evidence combined with the family's legal entanglements created a sense of helplessness for everyone involved. It seemed that every potential lead only raised more questions, and every new development only deepened the mystery. The case of Summer Wells was not only a tragedy for her family, but it also became a symbol of the flaws in both the legal and investigative systems. Questions about custody, responsibility, and accountability loomed large. As of now, no trial has taken place. The possibility of charges being filed against anyone involved in Summer's disappearance remains uncertain. However, the legal consequences of her disappearance have already altered the lives of those closest to her. The children's removal from the home and Don Wells's DUI arrest are just some of the many legal ramifications that have rippled out from this tragic event. While the search for Summer continues, the legal complexities surrounding her case remain unresolved. No formal courtroom drama has unfolded, but the case's legal entanglements have added to the uncertainty and tension that continue to surround Summer Wells's disappearance. The question remains, will justice be served, or will the answers to Summer's fate remain elusive? The investigation continues, and the search for truth goes on. But for now, the case is caught in a legal and investigative limbo that leaves all involved waiting for the next breakthrough.
So, we don't really know. Nothing's making sense at this point. So, and there's so many theories out there as to what could have happened. Some people say that Candace got rid of her, sold her or something. Some people are saying that she had dry drowning from when she had gone underwater in the lake and Hunter pulled her out. She seemed fine, but she was also kind of groggy or whatever. He said she was a little lethargic or whatever. And she could have dry drowned. And some people say that the video of her in the backseat of the car leaning on the milk cartons, some people think she's not even actually alive at that point. So, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. And this case happened long before I ever got into true crime. So I don't know any of the earlier stories. And in order for me to learn all the earlier stories, I would have to bring all y'all back so far from things that you already know that I'm not going to do that to you. So we're just going to, now we're going to Crime Bail News. Like I said, this person has been on top of it since day one. All right. And I already hit the like button. So I didn't subscribe yet, but I already hit the like button. There's a like button on here too. Unlike. Like. There we go.
For 4 years, the case of Summer Wells has been nothing but silence. No trace, no confession, no body. But that changed when divers returned to Fort Patrick Henry Lake. Beneath the murky water, they found a rusted barrel, a white blanket tangled in rocks, and a human-shaped figure resting on the lake bed. At first, it was dismissed as shadows and debris. Now, after a new 2025 tip led investigators back to the same exact coordinates, the question can no longer be ignored. What if the outline they saw wasn't just a shape, but someone?
Now, I remember when I was watching Adam Brown Adventures and Exploring with Nug, they're search and rescue divers, and that's all they do. Well, I don't know what else they do, but they do search and rescue divers. They're like a team that works together. And they pull cars out of the water a lot of times, and sometimes the people are still in their car. But they were diving, and I remember them finding the barrel and bringing a blanket up and a shirt, but they weren't sure of what they were seeing in the soot on the ground. It was very amazing.
And could that figure beneath the lake be the remains of 5-year-old Summer Wells? On the afternoon of June 15, 2021, 5-year-old Summer Moon Utah Wells vanished from her family's home on Ben Hill Road in Beech Creek, Tennessee. The disappearance sparked one of the largest manhunts in the state's history. Within hours, an AMBER alert echoed across Tennessee, helicopters hovered above the dense Appalachian woods, and search dogs traced the ground for days. Yet, despite thousands of man-hours, thermal imaging, and specialized teams, there was nothing. No footprints. No trail. No sound. Just the eerie stillness of a summer evening interrupted by a missing child. As days turned into weeks, the community of Hawkins County watched the case spiral from urgency to uncertainty. Rumors filled the silence. Theories about strangers, family tension, and tragic accidents, but none of them fit cleanly. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation confirmed only one thing: there was no trace of Summer Wells anywhere. By the time 2024 arrived, the search had slowed to a whisper. The posters faded. The trail went cold. But while the official search stopped, the internet refused to forget. In the corners of Reddit threads, YouTube channels, and Facebook groups, digital detectives kept digging. Among them were 3 independent content creators, Exploring with Nug, Ryan Finds Truth, and Adam Brown Adventures, divers known for uncovering vehicles, evidence, and even missing persons in lakes across the country. Unlike many who speculated from behind screens, they decided to go where few had gone before, under the surface of Fort Patrick Henry Lake. The choice of location wasn't random. The lake lies just a few miles from the Wells home, part of a winding system of rivers and coves where heavy debris and forgotten objects sink into obscurity. It's a place both beautiful and haunting: steep cliffs blanketed in moss, green water that turns black just a few feet below the surface. Local fishermen had long said that once something falls into that lake, it's gone forever. In the summer of 2024, the divers
I don't even know who thought of getting me this, but it's genius. It's 2025.
launched their small boat from a narrow ramp and began scanning the area with sonar. What they saw was enough to make them stop recording for a moment. The monitor showed a cylindrical shape, resting upright on the lakebed, surrounded by smaller irregular forms. At first, it could have been a rock formation, until one of the divers noticed the distinct outline of a barrel, partially buried in silt. They descended. The water was cold and thick with algae. Visibility dropped to less than 5 feet. As their flashlights cut through the murk, something pale caught the beam, a white blanket wedged between stones, moving slightly with the current. Next to it, a piece of fabric, possibly a shirt, clung to a cluster of submerged branches. And then, beyond that, a shape. It looked like a body. One diver later said in the video, his voice shaking slightly.
I saw like the shape of the body and like what appears to be a body. I mean, everything, the curves, it's a little more curvy than a rock around it.
You can't unsee it once you see it. The curve, the shoulders, even the roundness of the head, it wasn't random. It was shaped like a person.
From what I understand, once something has been in the water long enough to be covered in silt like that, a diver cannot pull it out of the water. Only law enforcement divers, like a blanket, whatever, yeah, you can pull that out. But if you can think it might be a human body, you can't. Just a diver cannot just pull it out, from what I understand.
For a moment, they hovered there, unsure whether to approach. The camera footage shows the light flickering over a form that seems almost human, lying still, pressed against the side of a rock ledge. The diver reaches out, but sediment clouds the view, erasing the image in seconds. When they surfaced, both agreed, whatever it was, it didn't look natural. Back on the boat, they examined what else they'd found. The rusted barrel appeared ancient, corroded along the seams as if something once filled it. Inside was only black water and residue. The white fabric, when lifted, revealed nothing beneath but sand and stone. Still, the divers couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something more than discarded junk. They returned several times that month, each time mapping a bit more of the lake's bottom. The coordinates, just a few miles downstream from Beach Creek, placed the site within the same radius where early search teams had focused in 2021. Yet no official report had ever mentioned a full underwater sweep of Fort Patrick Henry. That detail alone reignited online debate. When the footage was uploaded, the internet exploded. Forums lit up with frame-by-frame analyses, viewers enhancing the stills, tracing the outline that resembled a body, comparing the texture of the blanket to photos of Summer's clothes. Some called it coincidence. Others said it was the clue authorities had missed for 3 years. And then, almost a year later, a new development changed everything. In mid-2025, a private investigator, following an anonymous tip, contacted the divers and confirmed that the same coordinates appeared in a lead he had received through unofficial channels. The tip suggested that a large...
I don't know who the diver was or who the creator was, but I've contacted them since I've been following the Summer Wells case. They haven't ever contacted me back, but I have contacted them and suggested that they go there and look, because I was following leads from Don B. I guess that's what his name is, Don B.
container had been dumped in that area around the time Summer disappeared. The claim was never verified publicly, but it was enough to pull the divers back to the lake. This time, they brought updated sonar and underwater drones. The readings showed something even more curious. The barrel they'd once lifted was still there, now half buried in mud, and beside it, a faint depression shaped like a small body. Some said it could be erosion. Others weren't so sure. What made this discovery unsettling wasn't just what they found, it was where they found it. The site sits less than 2 miles from the path leading out of the Wells property, near an access point used by local workers. For investigators who understand behavioral patterns, this proximity means something. Criminals rarely travel far to dispose of evidence. They rely on familiarity, convenience, and the belief that what's close to home will draw the least suspicion. As word of the renewed search spread, theories reignited. Could Summer have accidentally fallen into the lake, her body trapped by debris? Or was something deliberately placed there, an attempt to bury the truth in plain sight? The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has never confirmed any discovery at Fort Patrick Henry Lake. Yet the silence itself speaks volumes. When asked if the area had been cleared, officials simply stated that all leads have been explored. But to many watching from home, that answer felt incomplete. If 2 separate groups, one civilian, one investigative, were drawn back to the exact same patch of water years apart, was that really coincidence? Or was it a sign of something unresolved? The divers' footage remains one of the most discussed pieces of citizen evidence in the Summer Wells case. Every frame has been analyzed, every shadow debated. Some see only rocks and debris. Others see the faint outline of a truth too heavy to float. Fort Patrick Henry Lake has become more than a geographic location. It's a symbol of what remains hidden, both literally and emotionally. Beneath its surface may not only rest discarded metal and forgotten trash, but also the weight of unanswered questions. And so, 4 years after that summer day in 2021, a single haunting question lingers. If the real clue was never in the woods, but under the water just miles from her home, then what exactly lies at the bottom of that lake?
Here we go again, another day, another can.
The old way of preparing for disasters is broken.
The footage was only the beginning. To understand what truly happened beneath Fort Patrick Henry Lake, we have to stop watching the surface and start examining the details hidden below it. What exactly did they uncover down there, and what does it mean? The discoveries beneath Fort Patrick Henry Lake form a strange and silent collection, fragments that, on their own, mean nothing, but together build a map of unease. When the divers surfaced with video and descriptions of what they had seen, Their findings divided viewers into two groups: those who saw coincidence and those who saw evidence. The first and most striking element was the rusted barrel. To an untrained eye, it's a common object. Lakes are full of debris, fishing equipment, old appliances, and forgotten waste. But what made this barrel different was its position and its condition. It stood upright, partially embedded in the silt, as if it had been placed rather than drifted. The corrosion ran unevenly, the outside heavily eaten away, the inner rim darker and smoother, suggesting that at one time it had held something that reacted with the metal from the inside out. In forensics, that detail matters. A container left empty underwater will corrode evenly. A container that once held organic material, fluids, or sealed contents corrodes from within, forming a thin layer of residue that looks almost oily. The divers described seeing this residue glinting faintly under their lights. The lake's currents are mild, meaning that a barrel of that size and weight would not have rolled naturally to the point where it was found. For it to remain upright and lodged against the base of a cliff, it must have been deliberately released in a controlled spot, likely from a boat or from the steep ledge above. This realization unsettled many who reviewed the footage. It implies intention, and in an investigation defined by absence, intention is the one thing that cannot be ignored. Near the barrel lay a white blanket, tangled between stones and almost fused with algae. The material appeared thicker than common fabric, closer to a bedsheet or tarp, its edges caught under rocks as though someone had pressed it down to keep it from floating. Water naturally moves lighter items across the surface, yet this piece had remained pinned in the same position for months, perhaps years. Divers who frequent the region say such positioning rarely occurs by chance. When an object becomes anchored in this way, it either drifted into a narrow crevice and was trapped, or it was physically placed there. The latter raises troubling implications. Just a few feet away, the divers recovered a white shirt, discolored by silt but still visibly cotton. The footage shows it sliding through their hands underwater, its fabric brittle from decay. The color caught attention because of its resemblance to the description of what Summer was last seen wearing: a light top. It's crucial to note that this does not confirm anything. White is the most common color for clothing. Yet, in contextual analysis, even a common object can shift meaning when found near others that fit a consistent narrative. When a blanket, a barrel, and a shirt all surface within the same radius, coincidence starts to feel deliberate. A few days later, during an additional scan, one diver spotted what looked like the handle of a shovel half buried in sediment. At first, it was dismissed as a branch, but closer inspection revealed a metal blade at the end, corroded yet intact. Its presence in such depth was puzzling. The area has no nearby construction or recreational sites, and the path to the lake is too steep for casual dumping. The shovel could have drifted downstream during flooding, but the rest of the lakebed was largely clear of similar debris. That isolation gives it significance, not as a weapon, but as a possible tool. And then there is the most debated image, a human-shaped depression in the mud beside the rock wall. The diver's words, "Once you see it, you can't unsee it," became a refrain repeated in every online discussion. The contour they described had rounded shoulders, a faint curve where the torso would narrow, and a darker patch near the base that resembled a head resting sideways. Mud shifts, light distorts, and optical illusions underwater are common. Still, the formation's symmetry troubled even skeptics. A natural collapse of sediment tends to scatter irregularly. This one, however, mirrored the proportions of a...
I wish we could see up close what they're talking about, because I'm so far not seeing a depression, which would be a concave, in the soot that would show something like that. I haven't seen it. Of course, I am not trained at looking underwater like that, so maybe.
Small human body. From an investigative perspective, each of these elements can be rationalized individually. A barrel can be trash. A blanket can drift. A shirt can be lost property. A shovel can wash away from somewhere upstream. A depression can form from rockfall. But taken together, they form what analysts call a suspicious chain of correlation, a sequence of unrelated findings that converge spatially and contextually in a way that suggests purpose. In underwater recovery cases, Such clusters often precede the discovery of actual evidence. The physical environment of Fort Patrick, Henry Lake enhances this theory. Because the water is murky and layered with algae, sunlight rarely reaches the bottom. Temperature drops sharply below 10 feet, preserving organic matter longer than on land. Silt accumulation acts like a slow burial process. Within a year, an object can sink several inches beneath the surface. This natural concealment means that by the time any official search returns, the landscape has already rewritten itself. What was once visible becomes hidden again, and what was hidden may never reappear. In that sense, every dive is a confrontation with time. The divers who filmed those anomalies may not have realized it, but they were capturing a frozen moment, a scene locked between decay and discovery. The question that investigators must now ask is whether these artifacts existed independently, or whether they are fragments of a single event that occurred on or around June 15, 2021. The logic connecting these finds to the Wells case rests not on direct proof, but on behavioral probability. Studies in environmental criminology show that, when evidence is concealed in water, it is almost always within a limited range of the offender's residence or workplace. Water provides both a psychological and practical barrier. It feels definitive, final. Once something sinks, it ceases to exist in the visible world. For someone seeking to hide the consequences of an act, intentional or accidental, water represents a form of erasure that seems safe. The Holston River, feeding into this lake, amplifies that possibility. It weaves behind rural properties, under bridges, and through isolated hollows. In summer, the current barely moves. In winter, storms churn the mud and shift debris along its path. If an object or body entered the water upstream, it could drift until weight and friction brought it to rest against the cliffs where the barrel was found. The diver's coordinates match precisely with a bend in the river known for collecting heavy debris. It is a natural trap, a place where the current slows just enough for things to settle. One forensic hydrologist reviewing the footage noted that the surrounding pattern of rocks near the depression indicated a minor landslide, possibly triggered by flooding. Such movement could easily cover remains or objects, sealing them under layers of sediment. This means that even if investigators returned now with high-resolution sonar, they might find only partial echoes, the lake's version of a ghost imprint. Beyond the physical evidence, there is the context of behavior. Online critics often ask why, if something truly significant lies there, no official recovery has taken place. The answer may lie in jurisdiction and risk. Underwater searches require permission from both environmental and law enforcement agencies. Without direct evidence of criminal activity, authorization is rarely granted. Civilian divers can explore and record, but they cannot excavate. That leaves a gap, a space between discovery and validation, where truth lingers unseen. This vacuum breeds speculation, but it also reveals how certain patterns repeat. In multiple cold cases across the country, unverified underwater footage later proved to align with genuine crime scenes once technology advanced. The footage from Fort Patrick Henry has that same uneasy quality, imperfect, grainy, but carrying a logic that refuses to disappear. It's not proof, but it's a direction. Critics of the theory argue that lakes accumulate mystery by their very nature. Over decades, they become time capsules of discarded history, lost equipment, dumped furniture, forgotten machines. Yet the key difference here lies in proximity and timing. These items weren't found in an industrial section or near a public dock. They were discovered near an undeveloped shoreline, within the radius of the original search, and consistent with the timeline of Summer's disappearance. That alignment is difficult to ignore. If the barrel was indeed placed intentionally, then its position, upright and pressed against the wall, indicates planning. If the blanket was anchored, it suggests an attempt to secure or hide. If the shovel and the shirt came from the same period, they could mark the residue of hurried movement. None of this proves guilt, but together they outline a scene of human interference. Nature alone rarely arranges chaos so neatly. To understand what might have happened beneath that water, one must also understand how silence operates in an investigation like this. The longer a case remains unsolved, the more every discovery is weighed against the fear of being wrong. Officials must guard against false hope. Citizens must interpret fragments without full context. Between these two extremes, a truth can drown. The footage of the barrel and the shape below it occupies that space, too uncertain to close the case, too compelling to forget. Every item retrieved from the lake remains unclaimed. No agency has identified them as evidence, yet no one can explain their presence either. The white fabric now sits in a storage bin, sealed to preserve it from contamination. The shovel rusts in a private collection of found objects. The barrel lies back where it was first seen, its surface splitting further each year. Only the depression, that human-shaped void in the mud, resists confirmation. Cameras can no longer find it, as if the lake itself decided to protect whatever secret it holds. For those following the case, this raises one inevitable question. What if that shape wasn't formed by erosion at all, but by a body that was once there and later released, carried silently into deeper water, or consumed by time? The possibility is horrifying, yet it fits the environment's nature. Fort Patrick Henry Lake has a way of absorbing evidence, turning solid things into memory. Whether those traces belong to Summer Wells or to another forgotten story remains uncertain. But what is certain is that they exist, immutable, silent witnesses resting in silt. For now, the lake keeps its answers. Yet the alignment of geography, evidence, and behavior suggests that what lies beneath is not coincidence. It's the echo of something deliberately hidden, waiting for someone brave enough to pull it back into the light.
So, Adam Brown and Exploring with Nug were so touched by what they saw that they felt it necessary to go back. I don't know. You think that they would, but that lake is also being fed by 3 or 4 other rivers. So it might be really hard to drain it. But I can understand the thought of draining that lake. I really can. It would make a lot of sense. But it could dam it up. Okay. This one says, breaking through unreleased information since Summer Wells' latest image was created. True crime. Okay. So we're going to make it bigger. Real names, events, and footage from historical true crime cases. Okay.
Wednesday, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation released an age-progressed photo created by a team of artists at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children of what Summer might look like today. It's been 4 years since 5-year-old Summer Wells went missing from her family's Rogersville home, and those who love her have never given up hope.
We wish something could happen. We wish something would lead into finding our daughter.
There's a lot of missing children out there that have age progressions done, and those are all tied to real stories that deserve a lot of attention.
For 4 long years, her face stayed frozen on faded posters. Then, this week, everything shifted. Investigators revealed a newly updated age-progressed image of Summer Wells, the clearest and most lifelike portrait ever made of how she might look today. It isn't just a picture. It's a door creaking open after years of silence. Within moments, the phones began to ring. Store clerks, neighbors, travelers, people who once thought their memories meant nothing, started calling, convinced they'd seen that face at a market, a playground, a gas station. Search teams adjusted their routes, and the map of this case began to breathe again. Could one new image succeed where thousands of searches have failed? For the first time in years, hope doesn't feel far away. It feels alive, immediate, within reach. For 4 long years, her face had stayed frozen in time, the same small child with bright eyes and sunlit hair, the same photo printed on posters that slowly faded under the Tennessee sun. Every few months, the image would reappear online, reminding people of what was lost, of what remained unanswered. But this week, everything changed. Investigators from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation released a newly updated age-progressed image of Summer Wells, the most detailed and lifelike portrait ever produced of how she might look today. It wasn't just another sketch. This one carried weight, precision, emotion. Created by forensic artists in collaboration with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the image was built using advanced software, AI modeling, and human artistry to capture not only what Summer could look like physically, but how the passing of time might have softened or sharpened her features. The result was hauntingly real, a portrait that felt alive, staring back at the world that had nearly forgotten her. The release hit like a pulse across the media. News anchors paused mid-broadcast to show the image. Morning shows replayed it with subdued reverence. On social media, her name trended again for the first time in years. People who hadn't followed the case since 2021 suddenly found themselves staring at the screen, unable to look away. Something about this picture felt different. Maybe it was the eyes, older, calmer, but still filled with that unmistakable light. Maybe it was what the image symbolized, that she was still out there somewhere, growing up while the world kept searching. According to investigators, this new rendering was not based on the previous composite. It was built from the ground up, recalculated bone structures, reinterpreted hair growth, refined skin tone, and reshaped expressions drawn from her parents' and brothers' genetic features. Forensic specialists spent weeks adjusting micro details, running countless versions until they reached one that felt undeniably human. It wasn't the image of a ghost. It was the image of a girl who might walk into a store today and be recognized. And that's exactly what investigators hoped for. In a brief statement, one official explained, "Sometimes, all it takes is one person, someone who catches a glimpse and feels that spark of recognition. That's why we do this." Within hours of the image's release, that spark started spreading. Calls began to pour in, first a few, then dozens. A cashier in Kentucky said she saw a child who looked almost identical to the new image, walking with an older couple. A woman in Virginia claimed she had seen a little girl with the same distinctive eyes at a playground earlier that week. A truck driver, passing through Tennessee, reported spotting someone who resembled Summer near a rest stop just before dawn. None of these tips have yet been confirmed, but for investigators, the pattern was unmistakable. After years of silence, the public was watching again. In Rogersville, where the Wells family still lives under the weight of uncertainty, the mood shifted. Local volunteers who had long stopped organizing search efforts began discussing a new coordinated sweep through the surrounding woods. The sheriff's office acknowledged receiving an influx of calls, describing it as the most active week of public engagement in nearly 2 years. Even Don Wells, Summer's father, posted a short message through a family friend. "We're grateful people still care. Every call means someone still believes. It's a fragile kind of hope, the kind that flickers easily, but after so long in darkness, even a flicker matters." The investigation, which had slowed to periodic updates, now had momentum again. The TBI emphasized that while the case remains open and active, each new lead must be verified carefully.
You know what I was wondering? It's crossing my mind as I'm watching this video. You don't see You're right. Oak Island is by ocean and they drained it. You're right. You're right. You don't see Dawn and Candace out searching anywhere. You don't see any stories of them out searching their property or the land around their property and the trees or anything like that. You don't see nothing. You don't hear nothing about them out searching. For a 5-year-old child she was 5 when she went missing, so she's 9 now. But they're not out looking for her. But yet, at the same time, there are content creators, and I've done it myself. I'm not going to say I'm any better than anybody else. complaining about Katie and Chris Proudfoot not being out searching for Sebastian. What makes one right and one wrong? Don't make no sense to me. If people are going to be upset that Katie and Chris are not out searching, they should also be upset that Dawn and Candace are not out searching. However, Dawn and Candace did go on many more talk shows and television programs. They went on Dr. Phil. They went with the behavior panel. They did all that. And they talked to many YouTubers and everything. So they got their story out. They pleaded for Summer to be brought back. But somebody should say something about them being out searching rather than just the community. There's just a thought that crossed my mind.
Minded the public to avoid speculation or rumor-driven theories. Share facts, not fiction. One post read, and if you know something, call us directly. Meanwhile, the image itself continued to travel. Within 24 hours, it had been shared over 1 million times across Facebook, X, and local news platforms. True crime forums reignited discussions, comparing every detail, the shape of her eyebrows, the slope of her nose, the subtle shift in her smile. One Reddit user wrote, "For the first time, I can actually imagine her growing up." Another replied, "She looks like she's asking us not to forget." But beyond the emotional reactions, something more tangible began to unfold. A small number of individuals reported that the image had jogged old memories, encounters they had brushed aside years ago.
It took me 30 years of doing laundry to learn this, but I'll teach it to you in about 1 minute.
We all know that One neighbor came forward saying she recalled seeing an unfamiliar vehicle near Ben Hill Road on the shared over 1 million times across Facebook, X, and local news platforms. True crime forums reignited discussions, comparing every detail, the shape of her eyebrows.
This one? See, she looks like she's asleep. And I did. And that's the image they want to portray, is her being asleep. But people have said they've seen blue around her mouth, which may be down below here, but I don't really see blue around it. Right. Who can sleep on such cold milk? Even if you're wearing a jacket, you just can't do it. But then again, supposedly Hunter was supposedly sitting right over here next to her in the seat. But think about it. If Hunter was sitting next to her in the seat, where's his shadow? Why is the sunlight filtering through and they're not being, because Summer's shadow is right there. Where's Hunter's? Right, she would have leaned over on him. That doesn't even make sense.
The slope of her nose, the subtle shift in her smile. One Reddit user wrote, "For the first time, present. They don't claim to show the truth, but they guide us toward it." In Summer's case, that bridge feels newly built, and for the first time, people are crossing it again. As one analyst put it, an image like this doesn't just help identify, it helps remember. and remembering can be the first step toward finding. Still, investigators remain cautious. They know too well how hope can rise and collapse in the same breath. The previous 4 years have been a painful cycle of tips that led nowhere, searches that uncovered nothing, and theories that divided the community. But this time, something feels different. Not because the science is better, though it is, but because people are listening again. In the days following the release, new posters with the updated image began appearing in gas stations and grocery stores across Tennessee, Kentucky, and the Carolinas. Volunteers printed them on their own dime, some attaching handwritten notes that read, "Don't give up." A candlelight vigil is being planned for late October to mark 4 years and 4 months since Summer disappeared. But for once, the gathering won't feel like a of aerial drones equipped with heat sensors, ground-penetrating radar, and K9 units trained for long-term human scent recovery. Unlike previous searches that focused on surface-level scans, this effort dug deeper, literally. Teams used advanced imaging drones that could detect subtle temperature variations beneath the soil, revealing potential burial sites or disturbed earth invisible to the naked eye. TBI officials explained that advances in thermal drone mapping over the last 2 years had changed how they approach missing person cases. One of the lead technicians described it as seeing the land's memory. Even after years, soil retains signs of change, and when those patterns are paired with scent detection dogs, the results can be astonishingly accurate. For the first time, the agency had the means to search with the precision of science rather than the limitations of hope. By noon, the first drone feeds began transmitting back to the command post. On a monitor inside a white TBI tent, grids of terrain glowed in shades of red, yellow, and blue. Every color represented temperature differences, moisture levels, and ground density. Investigators pointed to one small patch, marked with irregular readings. "Check Sector 4," one said. Moments later, a K9 handler named Carla directed her dog, a Belgian Malinois named Ranger, toward the indicated area. The dog's tail stiffened as it began circling, nose pressed to the ground. Cameras from local news outlets zoomed in, and for a few seconds, the valley held its breath. Nothing came of that particular alert, not that day. But for those watching, the sight of a dog responding again in those hills carried meaning beyond evidence. It was symbolic, a reminder that the case wasn't cold, that the search hadn't ended in a file drawer. It was still breathing. Later that afternoon, TBI spokesperson Leslie Earhart gave a brief press update. She stood before the gathered cameras, the hum of drones still audible overhead. "We are here because the data pointed us back," she said firmly. "Technology has evolved, and with that, our ability to detect has improved. Every time we return with better tools. And as long as there's ground we haven't covered, we'll keep looking." Her words spread across local stations within minutes. On social media, hashtags like Find Summer Wells and Back to Beach Creek began trending once more. For the community, the operation reignited a long, dimmed flame. People lined up near roadblocks offering water, sandwiches, and fuel for search vehicles. Children left handmade signs on the fences that read, "Don't stop looking." Churches opened their doors for volunteers to rest. For those who lived through the first chaotic weeks of 2021, the scene felt both familiar and strangely new. A softer, steadier kind of hope. Still, beneath the renewed optimism, the emotional toll lingered. Every search reminds the Wells family, and the people of Hawkins County, of what was lost. For the volunteers who had walked these trails dozens of times, there was the constant weight of déjà vu. You can't help but replay it all. One local firefighter said quietly, "The heat, the exhaustion, the waiting for news that never..."
You're right. Amanda Panda says it's just natural. You're not going to lean towards the cold, even if it's like 110 degrees outside, because it was in June. But she's not going to, just coming out of water and wearing a jacket because she just came out of the water, she's not going to lean on something cold. And I don't think anybody would, unless they weigh 400 pounds and everything's hot to them. But, anything's possible. We're going to see it again.
Limited what they could say, where they could live, and how they could interact with their surviving children. Its dismissal represented a rare shift in the narrative, from suspicion and bureaucracy, back to what matters most, the search for Summer. According to sources familiar with the process, the dismissal came after the court determined that all necessary conditions set by the department had been met. That included completing parenting programs, substance evaluations, and continuous compliance checks. While DCS does not comment on individual cases, legal experts noted that such a dismissal, after several years of oversight, usually signals full resolution and restored parental rights. In the Wells case, it also carried symbolic weight. For years, the public conversation around them had been dominated by judgment. Online communities dissected their every gesture and word, sometimes with compassion, often with cruelty. The family's house became a backdrop for countless YouTube videos. Their voices.
They actually, rather than having them return home from DCS, they signed away their rights to all 3 of the boys. So they don't have any of the children now. And I'm presuming that there'll be a new DCS case reactivated once, if Summer's ever found, if she's still alive. Because if she is alive, why is she not home? Who had what to do with it? If she's not alive, then she won't be returning to the house anyway. She'll be. No, they signed away their rights. They did it free willing. They did it to stop the scrutiny.
Replayed and analyzed frame by frame. Through it all, Dawn and Candace maintained that, no matter how damaged their reputation had become, they loved their daughter and would never stop searching. When news of the DCS decision spread, reactions were mixed. Some celebrated it as a long overdue relief, a chance for the family to heal, and perhaps even find unity in tragedy. Others saw it skeptically, wondering if the move signaled leniency or fatigue from the system. But for Dawn and Candace, the meaning was deeply personal. In a short post on Dawn's Facebook page, he wrote, "It's been almost 4 years since our world fell apart. Today, something good finally happened. We can't go back, but maybe we can start again." Their attorney, a family law specialist who had represented them since 2021, told a local paper that the dismissal closes one painful chapter. She added, "This was never about punishment. It was about rehabilitation and proving stability. My clients have done everything required of them. Now, they can move forward without that constant fear of the system watching over them." For those close to the investigation, the timing of this legal turn was impossible to ignore. Just a month after TBI renewed its search in Beach Creek, the Wells family received its first piece of good news in years. Some saw it as coincidence. Others called it a sign that perhaps the story was beginning to shift in their favor, that the universe was finally giving back a little of what it had taken. Neighbors who had kept their distance began to speak a little more kindly. One woman who lives down the road from Ben Hill said, "I don't know if they're innocent or guilty of anything. I just know they've been through hell, and maybe now they can breathe again." That small wave of empathy rippled through the community, softening the tone of conversations that had once been filled with anger and accusation. Yet, even with this new beginning, the emotional cost of the past 4 years can't be erased. The Wells home, still painted with the same peeling red siding, remains both a place of memory and of loss. The yard where Summer once played is quiet, overgrown in parts. Yet Dawn still keeps a small cross near the edge of the property, decorated with artificial flowers that never fade. "I look at it every morning," he reportedly told a neighbor. "It reminds me what I'm living for." With the DCS case now closed, the family's focus has shifted fully back to the search. Dawn has resumed outreach with missing persons advocates and even appeared in a local awareness video for other families of missing children. Candace, who has largely avoided the public eye since 2022, was seen attending church again. Her first appearance in months. Friends describe her as fragile but determined. She's quieter now, one acquaintance said, but she still talks about Summer every single day. For investigators,
How that man looked like he got you, I don't know. Unless he colored his hair and shaved his beard.
this legal development changes little in a procedural sense. The criminal investigation remains separate. But for those watching from the outside, it feels like a reset button, a chance for empathy to re-enter the story. The Wells family, often painted in harsh colors, are now being seen in a slightly different light, as parents who may have been flawed, but who have endured more loss than most can imagine. There's also a psychological dimension to this shift. After years of being portrayed as either villains or first time in a long time, Don Wells sounded like a man who still believes it could. By mid-July 2025, something began to shift online. The Facebook group, Summer Wells Missing from TN, once quiet and slow, suddenly lit up again. For months, the posts had been routine, short prayers, shared memories, a few hopeful emojis. But after the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation resumed its search in Beach Creek and released the new age-progressed photo, everything changed. Comments multiplied by the minute. The group's feed turned into a constant stream of motion, voices, and possibility. The group had existed since the first days of Summer's disappearance. Created by volunteers, it had grown into one of the largest online spaces dedicated to her case. Over the years, its tone shifted from frantic speculation to quiet remembrance. Yet in July 2025, it came alive again with urgency, new posts, new discussions, and above all, new information. On July 12, a moderator published a short post that read, 4 years, 27 days. She would be 9 years old now. If you remember anything, even the smallest thing, please reach out to TBI. The smallest detail might matter. That message set off a chain reaction. Within hours, the comment section filled with memories from across Tennessee. People mentioned things they thought they'd forgotten. Cars parked where they shouldn't have been. Unfamiliar faces seen on the road. Sounds they couldn't explain. Some wrote that they had been too afraid to speak up years ago, worried that what they knew wasn't important enough. The moderators, aware of how quickly rumor can turn into noise, reminded everyone to stay factual. If you have real information, one of them posted, please contact the official tip line. It was a simple reminder, but it became a kind of mantra repeated by others in the comments. The energy inside the group grew fast. Posts from 2021 were resurfaced and re-examined. Members compared old maps with recent satellite images, trying to spot differences. Screenshots of early interviews and search area photos circulated again, paired with captions asking, did we miss something? It wasn't official investigation work. It was collective memory in motion. Over the next several days, the activity spilled beyond Facebook. Local news outlets noticed the surge of discussion and began mentioning it in their nightly updates. WJHL aired a short segment titled, Community Online Pushes New Tips in Summer Wells Case. The report noted that while TBI hadn't confirmed receiving any new evidence, they had acknowledged an increase in calls and online submissions. For the people in the group, that single acknowledgement felt like validation. One longtime member commented beneath a shared screenshot of the broadcast, they're listening again. It was liked hundreds of times within the hour. Inside the group, the atmosphere balanced between hope and caution. Some users believed this renewed attention could finally bring a breakthrough. Others worried it might repeat past cycles of excitement followed by silence. Let's not get carried away, one member wrote.
Okay. So now we're going to go on to another latest 2 a.m. arrest. Neighbor COZ reveals details no one noticed. Summer Wells case, true crime. This sounds interesting. This is also from Crimevale New. Give him a thumbs up and enlarge. and let's go.
Changed everything. A woman identifying herself as Cuz, the cousin of Candace Wells, dialed into a late-night live stream and dropped a story that stunned even hardened true crime viewers. She claimed the Wells family was innocent, that Summer wasn't the target, that the abduction was a revenge hit gone wrong after a banned substances bust tied to a man called Spider.
Look up a dude named Spider, okay?
All right.
He was arrested at 2 o'clock in the morning the day Summer went missing.
She named people, gave times, even described where it happened. And when the hosts checked the details, much of what she said seemed to exist, just not when or how she claimed. Is she revealing a buried truth, or concocting the perfect lie?
You can investigate those too. You can.
Okay, I'm gonna look up and see if they have a cousin named Cuz first. That's gonna be
No,
my
listen.
first step.
Look up a dude named Spider. Okay.
All right.
He was arrested at 2 o'clock in the morning the day Summer went missing.
Okay.
And he was in a drug deal. Okay. He was arrested a few miles down from their house, right in Rogersville, Tennessee. He was meeting three people from Virginia. They were coming up. Okay. And somebody called him an anonymous tip, and he was busted.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't the Wells that called him in, but the people they were hanging out with called him in. You can look this up. His name's Steven, and he goes by Spider. June 15th, you look this up. I'm telling you the truth. They bust Spider.
Okay, his name is Steven, though.
Yeah.
And he was arrested June 15th
Yep.
of last
At
year.
2 o'clock in the morning. No.
2 years ago.
2021.
At the center of the Cuz theory lies a single timestamp, 2 o'clock in the morning. According to the caller, that was the moment everything began, the spark that set off the chain reaction, leading to Summer's disappearance. She said a man called Spider was arrested a few miles from a 110 Ben Hill Road, the Wells family home. His real name, she claimed, was Stephen. He was caught during a banned substances deal with 3 people from Virginia after someone made an anonymous tip. Her tone was confident, her details precise, and her story fit together so tightly that it sounded almost impossible to question. She told the host that everything tied back to 110 Ben Hill Road, but insisted it wasn't the Wells who made the call that led to the bust. It was the Crawfords, she said. In just a few sentences, she connected banned substances, revenge, and the Wells property into a single line of causation: a banned substances bust at dawn, a kidnapping at dusk, and a tragedy born from mistaken identity. It was simple, dramatic, and felt disturbingly real. But when the claims were checked against public records, the structure immediately collapsed. Local archives from Hawkins County confirm that a man named Stephen Lee, Spider, Blake did exist, and that he was arrested by the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office after an anonymous tip about methamphetamine possession. The arrest time was close, around 2 a.m., but the date wasn't June 15, 2021, the day Summer vanished. It was July 15, 2021, exactly 30 days later. That difference is not a technical error. It destroys the timeline on which Cuz built her entire version of events. The arrest did happen in Rogersville, roughly 3 to 4 miles from the Wells home, near Ebbing and Flowing Springs Road off East Main Street. Deputies Zachary England, Scott Stewart, and Reba Matthews reported that Blake was walking on the roadside when they approached him. Acting on a tip, they searched him and found 11 small baggies containing about 7 grams of methamphetamine. He admitted the banned substances were his and was charged with felony possession with intent to deliver. There was no vehicle, no group of 3 people from Virginia, and no mention of any connection to the Wells family. The overlap between what Cuz said and what the record shows is limited to 4 points: the man's nickname, the time of arrest, the anonymous tip, and the general proximity to the Wells residence. Everything else, the date, the alleged group from Virginia, the suggestion that the arrest led to immediate retaliation, falls apart under basic scrutiny. When you move the date 30 days forward, the chain of cause and effect no longer holds. Cuz's version implies a continuous line: Spider arrested at dawn, news spreading through a banned substances network during the day, and by evening, someone arriving at the wrong home and taking the wrong child. It sounds coherent only if all those events occur within a single 24-hour cycle. The verified record shows something completely different. The Wells case was already national news by July 15. The property had been searched. Law enforcement had public command posts in the area. The idea that a group of banned substances dealers would kidnap a child near the most heavily monitored address in Hawkins County a month later is not logical. The only piece that fits neatly is the time, 2 a.m. That detail made the story feel authentic. It's specific enough to sound like first-hand knowledge, but generic enough that no one could immediately verify it during a live stream. When Cuz said, 2 in the morning, it created an image of secrecy, danger, and precision. It felt like something only an insider could know. By the time anyone checked, that detail had already become a permanent fixture in the public imagination. The number survived, the context didn't. The real arrest is mundane. July 15, 2021. A man alone on a road. A call to the sheriff's office from an unknown tipster. No gunfight, no carload from Virginia, no connection to the Wells family. Spider was booked into the Hawkins County Jail, held without bond, and scheduled for a hearing on August 2. The report fits on one page. It's an everyday banned substances arrest in a county overwhelmed by methamphetamine cases. Nothing about it links to a missing child. The 30-day discrepancy is more than a date error. It reverses the order of cause and effect. In the logic of criminal investigation, sequence determines plausibility. If event A causes event B, then A must come before B. In this case, A, the Spider arrest, came after B, the disappearance of Summer Wells. Therefore, it cannot serve as the trigger for retaliation. Once that link breaks, the rest of the story loses its core. The significance of that single date error extends beyond chronology. It reveals how easily a rumor can attach itself to a real event to gain credibility. Cuz didn't invent Spider. He's in the records. She didn't invent an arrest at night. That also happened. She only shifted the timeline, turning a July incident into a June one. That adjustment gave her story the illusion of immediacy. It turned a routine banned substances bust into a kidnapping. Why she did it is open to interpretation.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, why would she call Dolly and tell him that something happened that in July actually happened in June? What does she stand to gain from that? I can't gather what she's trying to. Why would she do that? Why lie about something like that? Unless it was just to get the public thinking about Dawn and Candace and a bunch of illegal substance uses. Clout, yeah. But now she's got false clout. She's got clout as a liar and a narc.
She could have misremembered, repeating a rumor that circulated inside her family or community, or she could have deliberately reframed a known event to construct a more convincing narrative, one that exonerated the Wells family and redirected blame.
You're right. That does make sense. She got her 15 minutes of fame. Now, thanks to me, she got 5 more.
Toward an outside criminal circle. In either case, the reliability of her info can stand. The arrest record remains public, the timestamp's immutable. The story, no matter how vividly told, cannot bend time to match itself. Cuz's entire theory begins to disintegrate at that point. Without the timing, there is no motive chain. Without the motive, there is no reason to invoke revenge. And without revenge, the idea of a mistaken identity abduction collapses. What's left is a rumor built on a real name and an imaginary schedule. When the verified date is restored, the revenge narrative disappears, and the Cuz theory loses its foundation.
I don't know how true it is, but I saw on one of these YouTube videos, I don't know which one, that there's actually a cave under the Wells' house. Somebody said it's supposed to be a hidden cave or something. Somebody says that's where they think Summer went, but I don't know.
Before it even begins. The first fact checked is the first fact that fails. From that moment on, every subsequent claim must be treated not as truth, but as reconstruction.
Now streaming.
Please welcome the star of our show.
It's an all-new season of Holly.
Cuz's story didn't stop at Spider. It widened into a second arc meant to explain motive. The abduction wasn't aimed at the Wells at all, she said. It was aimed at a different family, the Crawfords. The intended victim, according to her, was a girl named Journey, the daughter of Marina Crawford, who, in Cuz's telling, floated on the edges of the same banned substances scene that supposedly led to Spider's arrest. The logic was straightforward and seductive. If someone tipped off the police and blew up a deal, the people who lost money would retaliate. If the caller was connected, by address, acquaintances, or rumor, to 110 Ben Hill Road, then a quick, dirty payback could land at the wrong door. A child taken from the wrong family would explain why nothing in the Wells household ever quite fit the pattern of a planned abduction. It turned chaos into a story that closed all the loops. Then Cuz added a final turn of the screw. She claimed that a man named Ricky Crawford was killed, drowned, she said, right after the Spider incident. In her sequencing, Spider's bust set off a fuse. Ricky's death proved the fuse was lit. Summer's disappearance was the blast. The claim had the shape of a neat triangle, a tipster circle, a dead man, a missing child. The effect on listeners was immediate. The proximity to the Wells gave it relevance. Anyone already suspicious of the Wells timeline felt an alternative click into place. But the moment those names were checked, the seams split. No public record shows a missing child report for a girl named Journey Crawford in Tennessee around June 2021. No Amber Alert. No police summary. No coverage that would accompany even a brief disappearance. If a child...
Well, no. If they've got Summer and they think they've got Journey, why would they go back for Journey? I'm sure Summer... Well, no, because I got their own kids, supposedly. Okay.
Child named Journey had been threatened, removed, or even rumored to be missing, there should be a trace, an incident log, a family statement, a social media callout. There isn't one. And the Ricky claim fares worse. A man named Ricky Dale Crawford does appear in local dockets. But he is alive. His file reflects arrests and probation issues, not a drowning, not a homicide, not a death certificate. The proof of retaliation that anchors Cuz's theory evaporates on contact with documentation. What remains are fragments that feel true without being verifiable. It is plausible that members of a Crawford family lived rough, bounced through unstable housing, or hovered near homeless camps. Those conditions exist in Hawkins County, and they intersect with substance, probation, and welfare checks. It is plausible that people with the surname Crawford had ties, strong or loose, to the same porous social circles around Ben Hill Road. It is plausible that someone named Marina struggled on those margins. None of that converts plausibility into evidence. Cuz took those plausible fragments and fixed them into a frame labeled motive, then asked the audience to supply the screws. The rhetorical method is precise. Start with a concrete name that can be found in a docket, a Ricky. Add a second name that sounds specific, but isn't anchored to any public record, a Journeyed. Stitch them to the earlier, 2 a.m. arrest so the whole structure reads as a single chain. Each part lends credibility to the others because they appear to corroborate across stories. The problem is that only one part, the existence of people named Crawford in the area, survives external review. The rest relies on repetition and the confidence of the speaker. Even if you grant the possibility that Cuz misheard or misspoke, the scale of error is not a typo, it transforms outcomes. Saying a man is dead when he is not changes the category of the claim from perfect memory to false assertion. Saying a child was the real target, when no record of that child's endangerment exists, moves the claim from untested lead to unsupported allegation. In investigative terms, those are hard failures. A lead with no corroboration does not become more reliable because it fits a narrative. A rumor with a name attached does not become a fact because the name is real. There is another practical problem with the mistaken target premise. If the objective was to punish the people who lost Spider, the cleanest retaliation would be directed at the known adults who caused the loss, not at a child. That distinction matters in banned substances world payback. Violence tends to follow debt chains and perceived betrayals, and the message must be legible to those inside the network. Striking a child from a different household introduces risk and ambiguity. Risk because it draws law enforcement heat. Ambiguity because the intended message gets lost in the noise of a high-profile missing child case. In other words, the very act that would allegedly declare power would be the act most likely to destroy the operation that carried it out. Criminals do irrational things, but durable networks avoid self-immolation. What, then, explains the persuasive pull of Cuz's account? Specificity and proximity. She spoke as if she knew Journey and Marina personally. She described Ricky's fate with the certainty of a relative delivering bad news. That confidence, broadcast in real time, functions like a credential. It persuades viewers to give her claims a grace period. By the time anyone combs through records, the story has already settled into memory. There was a second
Was that drum in that video in the yard when they looked for something? Yes. It was not the one in the water. It said for sale. Was it something that they were known for selling? No. They bought burn barrels. And if somebody has burn barrels, they put for sale on the side of the burn barrel so that you know which ones you can pick up and which ones you can't when you go to purchase them.
She made it clear that the lie about timing created space that could hold anything. Law enforcement has never publicly confirmed or denied whether Candace left during those hours. They rely on cell phone data, witness statements, and a 911 log that starts at 6:30 p.m. But Cuz's statement suggests that even if the data puts Candace's phone near Ben Hill Road, it doesn't mean she was physically present at the house. In rural terrain,
Right. Did they sell the burn barrels regularly, or is it something they had just bought because is that not what was under the water? They had regular access to those barrels. Right. But living out in the country, people buy a lot of burn barrels because it's easier to burn trash than it is to go to the landfill or something like that. And a lot of people just burn it and use the ash for their garden and stuff. I know when we lived in Fort Smith, my dad used to burn a lot of tree limbs and stuff in burn barrels in the backyard. He'd burn them till the burn barrel burnt, and then he'd have to go get a new burn barrel. Because yours burns through. You can only use a burn barrel so many times, and the bottom of it, this far up or what, however, will burn out, and then you lose this much of the barrel because it does. Like, I feel like that is a key clue. It could be. It could be. I mean, Summer could have been put in a barrel much like that. And I think that's what the divers were thinking too. Because the barrel was down in the water sitting upright. So, and the only thing that came out was black, sludgy water. Now, if there had been, if they had put lye or something like that that would cause decomposition in the barrel before with a small child, and the barrel was put in the water like that, it would have decomposed, and I think it would have turned into a black sludge like that, especially being underwater. And it would have all just run out with the holes that had eroded through the barrel when they pulled the barrel out. They had a hard time pulling that barrel out because it was like crumbling in their hand.
actions, that's where the trail ends. The identity of an informant is protected by policy, not public record. So when Cuz claimed to know exactly who made that call, she was stepping beyond what anyone outside law enforcement could legitimately know. This raises the central question: how could she know? There are only two realistic explanations. The first is that she had access to internal or first-hand information. Someone connected to the investigation, to the Crawfords, or to Spider himself told her who made the call. The second is that she guessed, piecing together fragments of rumor and assigning blame to make the narrative coherent. Both scenarios are possible, but each carries very different implications. If the first is true, and she did have inside knowledge, then Cuz's relationship to the case is much closer than she admitted. Her statements would
A used burn barrel would crumble, especially being put in the water after being burned. Yes, it would. If you could actually get it into the water after being burned. Yeah. And whatever was inside would turn into a black slush. A black sludge, I guess. I mean, you make a valid point. I really do agree with you.
suggest contact with someone directly involved in the investigation or with the arrested man himself. That level of detail, knowing the identity of a supposed anonymous tipster, doesn't come from gossip. It comes from someone who has either read restricted paperwork or spoken to participants. Yet Cuz never explained how she came to know. She only said, repeatedly, "We've already turned all of this over to TBI," implying that she and unnamed relatives had been in communication with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation about their findings. If that was true, her insistence that nobody was listening to them becomes harder to dismiss as performance. It sounds like frustration from someone who believed she'd given real information to authorities and had been ignored. But the second scenario, guesswork, is equally plausible. Within small communities, especially those affected by banned substances, rumors about who called the cops travel faster than the truth. Every arrest generates speculation about betrayal. Someone always points a finger. It's an ecosystem where trust and paranoia coexist, and gossip becomes currency. In that world, saying, "The Crawfords called it in," doesn't require proof. It only requires a motive and a target. The Wells had already been painted as suspicious. Shifting the blame to another family restored some dignity to them, while giving the audience a new villain. It's narrative balance disguised as insider knowledge. To test which version holds more weight, it helps to look at what was publicly available at the time of her call. The arrest record for Stephen Lee, Spider Blake, was a matter of public record, but it didn't include the name of the tipster. The
My daughter almost got ripped off by her mechanic.
only confirmed details were the location, the time, and the fact that the tip existed. No media outlet published the source. No follow-up interview or police statement elaborated on it. That means anyone who claimed to know who called would either have to be speculating or referencing information not contained in open files. Cuz spoke as if she were reading from a closed report. Her language was exact. It wasn't the Wells. It was the Crawfords. No hesitation, no, I think, or I heard. That tone, the certainty of someone used to stating facts, made her story convincing even when the data didn't back it up. She anchored her claim to a moral argument. The Wells were being destroyed publicly for something they didn't do, while the real culprits hid behind anonymity. It appealed to the audience's sense of injustice and framed her as a whistleblower, not a gossip. Yet, when you compare her confidence to what can actually be known, the gap is obvious. The Hawkins County Sheriff's Office had no public reason to share the identity of a confidential tipster with anyone.
I didn't know that. Okay. Amanda Panda says, a used burn barrel would crumble, especially being put in the water after being burned. And then she says, and cause it to float upright. It could possibly cause it to stand upright, especially if it's still got whatever burn Whatever had been burned in it, inside of it, it would cause it to stand up straight if it was dropped down in the water straight like that. You make a good point.
Much less a distant relative of a family adjacent to the case. The TBI, if they were involved, would be bound by the same confidentiality. That leaves only a narrow path for how she could possess such knowledge. A personal connection to Spider, or the Crawfords that allowed her to hear it firsthand. But even then, that information would be hearsay, not confirmation. Her repeated reference to way is also telling. Throughout the call, she said, "We have turned this into TBI. We've been trying to get them to listen. We've sent proof." The plural suggests a small internal group, perhaps relatives, perhaps community members, who had gathered material on their own. If they genuinely submitted evidence, it would explain her anger at being ignored. But it also suggests a common dynamic in high-profile cases, civilians constructing parallel investigations, convinced that official silence means conspiracy. The credibility of her statement depends on how far you think an ordinary citizen can reach into a live investigation. In Tennessee, tip lines and arrest logs are heavily filtered before release. Even local journalists have to file requests to access basic reports. For Cuz to identify a specific family as the anonymous source would require information not available through those channels. That doesn't automatically mean she lied, but it means her knowledge either came from someone directly involved, or from a process of elimination shaped by rumor. If she did guess, her choice of scapegoat wasn't accidental. Naming the Crawfords served multiple functions. It shifted suspicion away from the Wells, who were under intense public scrutiny. It tied the story to existing banned substances-related rumors, adding realism. And it reinforced her own reliability. She wasn't defending the Wells blindly, she said. She was exposing the real people responsible for triggering the chain of events. In that framing, calling out the Crawfords became proof of her courage, not recklessness. Still, the fact remains that her claim exceeded what any public record could support. The Spider file lists the tip as anonymous, full stop. Law enforcement confirmed nothing more. Until a named individual, or possible it sounded, the more convincing it became, because it explained the unexplained. In reality, the words homeschool and Zaya are common markers in faith-based online communities. Thousands of posts include both terms without any sinister meaning. The Amish Mennonite and evangelical groups in rural Tennessee and Virginia often describe their family education that way. To someone unfamiliar with that culture, the language can sound coded, even threatening. To someone looking for signs of trafficking or child concealment, it sounds like confession. Cuz took that misunderstanding and gave it certainty. No local investigation ever confirmed the existence of a child camp or Isaiah house connected to the Wells case. No witnesses saw unregistered vehicles heading into Rowan Mountain. No aerial searches revealed isolated structures. And no missing child files were linked to the region. The entire claim traces back to a screenshot, a small digital artifact pulled out of its religious frame and inserted into a crime story. What happened next followed the usual rhythm of viral fear. Viewers clipped Cuz's quote, reposted it, and built threads on social media asking if the Zaya house was real.
So they spread rumors that turned out to be not true. Okay, next it says, she confessed everything. The secret investigation Candace tried to hide Summer Wells' true crime. Give it a thumbs up. Let it grow up.
For years, the story of Summer Wells has been told in fragments, whispers, suspicions, and can erase. And if those words truly reflected what was happening behind closed doors, then they are not simply echoes of a frightened mother. They are the first signal of a truth that investigators may yet be able to prove. The question now is whether other voices, like that of Summer's Aunt Mary, will confirm the shadow Candace revealed, or whether they will open the door to an even darker reality waiting just below the surface. When the disappearance of a child becomes a national obsession, voices rise from every direction: neighbors, former friends, strangers on the internet. But the voice that matters most is the one that comes from inside the family itself. In the case of Summer Wells, that voice belonged to Mary, Summer's aunt, who stepped forward with claims that were as disturbing as they were difficult to dismiss. She was not a neighbor speculating from across the road. She was not a passerby trying to insert herself into the spotlight. She was family, and that fact alone gives her allegations a weight that cannot be ignored. Mary's relationship to the Wells family positioned her in a way outsiders never could be. She knew Dawn not as a stranger, but as blood. She understood the rhythms of the household, the patterns of behavior, and the family secrets whispered behind closed doors. In family dynamics, trust is complicated. Love and resentment often intertwine. But when someone close to you accuses you of sexual, the claim strikes deeper than mere gossip. It hints at a history dark enough to fracture the bonds of kinship itself. Her allegations were clear. Don Wells, Summer's father, had engaged in inappropriate sexual behavior in the past. Mary spoke of incidents that went back decades, stories of within the family that she claimed were covered up or ignored. Some accounts pointed to behavior when Dawn was younger, possibly as a teenager, involving family members who were vulnerable. She painted a portrait not of a man who suddenly snapped in 2021, but of someone whose shadow had stretched across multiple generations. The details, though painful, matter. Mary described Dawn as someone who had crossed boundaries long before Summer was ever born. She spoke of sexual misconduct toward siblings, of situations where trust was violated at its most intimate level. While these accounts lacked the kind of physical evidence that would hold up in a courtroom, they were not vague accusations thrown at random. They were specific, rooted in the memory of lived experience, and they came from someone who knew the family's internal history. What makes Mary's testimony particularly unsettling is how it aligns with the narrative already emerging from Candace's own alleged confession. If Candace told her friend that she and Dawn were under investigation for SA, and Mary independently accused Dawn of sexual in the past, the stories intersect. They come from different angles, one a present-day slip of the tongue, the other a recollection of past trauma, but together they form a line pointing to the same conclusion. Don Wells carried with him a history of sexual suspicion. Psychologists often note that patterns of behavior, especially those involving sexual misconduct, rarely occur in isolation. Someone who crosses boundaries once is more likely to cross them again. If Mary's allegations about Dawn's past are true, they suggest not just a single act but a trajectory. They imply a man who has lived for years with impulses unchecked, someone whose capacity for violating trust may have continued into his role as a father. In that context, Summer's disappearance becomes less a mystery of an outside predator and more the grim culmination of patterns seeded long before she was born. Of course, credibility must always be tested. Families are complicated, and estranged relatives sometimes harbor resentment strong enough to twist the truth. Did Mary have reason to despise Dawn beyond the allegations? Was there bad blood between them, disputes over property, money, or grudges that had festered for years? It is possible. In the crucible of family feuds, accusations can become weapons, sharpened not by truth but by vengeance. Skeptics will argue that Mary's timing, stepping forward during the height of the investigation, was opportunistic. They may see her as someone seeking attention, amplifying the drama around an already sensational case. But even skepticism has limits. Mary never wavered in her claims. She did not recant. She did not adjust her story to suit the headlines. Her words remained consistent, anchored in the same disturbing allegations each time she spoke. If this were simply an act of malice, one might expect inconsistencies, embellishments, or eventual retreat. Instead, what we see is a steady voice insisting that Dawn's past was not as innocent as it appeared. Public records do not reveal any official charges of sexual against Dawn from earlier in his life. No court documents exist to prove Mary's claims. That absence is frustrating, but it does not erase the possibility that they occurred. In many families, such crimes are buried, shielded by shame and silence. Victims often fear speaking out, especially when the accused is a relative with power in the household. It is not uncommon for these stories to surface decades later, when the climate feels safer and when a new event, such as the disappearance of a child, forces the truth into the open. What we do know is that Don's documented criminal history paints the picture of a troubled man. Reports show arrests involving banned substances, weapons, and even domestic incidents. He was once caught driving under the influence while possessing a firearm, a combination that underscores recklessness and disregard for law. There are also accounts of violent behavior, the kind that suggests a volatile temperament. While these are not proof of sexual misconduct, they support the narrative of a man with a history of destructive choices. When viewed alongside Mary's testimony by banned substances, it would mean that Summer's disappearance was not only foreseeable, but inevitable, the outcome of a home already steeped in cycles of predation. For investigators, it would also mean they had overlooked a key opportunity, failing to act on warning signs that, if true, were being spoken about in the community even before the little girl vanished. That is why her voice cannot be dismissed. In a case already marred by silence, by conflicting statements, and by inconclusive searches, the allegations of a neighbor may not convict anyone, but they force us to re-examine the Wells household with sharper eyes. As we move deeper into the story, Jody Sue's account serves as another piece of the puzzle, one that fits disturbingly well with the accusations of Mary and the admission attributed to Candace. And if that portrait is accurate, then Summer's silence was not just the silence of a child who disappeared, but of a child who may have been rendered voiceless long before the world noticed she was gone. In every state, there is an agency designed to protect children when ordinary safeguards fail. In Tennessee, that responsibility belongs to the Department of Children's Services, known as DCS. Their mandate is wide. They can investigate homes.
I'm trying to find the important part.
One of the most haunting questions in the disappearance of Summer Wells is not simply what happened to her, but where. Geography matters in any investigation, and the landscape surrounding 110 Ben Hill Road offers a labyrinth of possibilities. The Wells home sits off Beach Creek Road, a rural stretch lined with thick woods, dirt paths, and steep hollows that seem to swallow sound and sight. The terrain itself becomes a suspect, dense enough to conceal movement, winding enough to lose a trail, and secluded enough to keep secrets for years. From that home, Don Wells traveled daily to his construction job, a route that cut across back roads and forested stretches. The distance between Beach Creek and his worksite was not great in absolute miles, but long enough to offer countless places where a person could stop without drawing attention. Hidden clearings, service roads, abandoned sheds, and narrow bridges dotted the way. In rural Tennessee, a driver can pull over and vanish from view within seconds, shielded by undergrowth or by the curve of a hill. Investigators studying this case have long considered whether Don's commute could also have been a corridor for something darker than routine labor. The theory is simple but chilling. Some believe Don may have returned home the afternoon Summer vanished, either briefly leaving work or arriving earlier than expected. From there, he could have taken Summer with him on the road back out, presenting the image of normalcy to anyone watching. What happened next, according to this scenario, is that she never came back. Along the drive, there are endless opportunities to stop, to step out, to leave something behind. A child could be carried off the road into the woods, left in a shallow hollow, or hidden beneath discarded debris. If not hidden in the forest, she could have been taken closer to his job site, left in a place far from Beach Creek, where no one would think to search. Support for this theory comes not only from speculation, but from fragments of reported evidence. Early search efforts with tracking dogs picked up Summer's scent, tracing it down into the woods near the Wells property. But then, the trail abruptly ended at a roadway. That sudden cutoff has always been suspicious. It suggests that her scent did not fade away naturally, but was interrupted, as if she was lifted into a vehicle, carried beyond the reach of the dogs' noses. This aligns with the idea of her being transported, rather than wandering off. Adding to the suspicion is a lingering detail that circulated widely online. A red Toyota Tacoma pickup truck, reportedly spotted near the area on the day of her disappearance. Law enforcement at one point appealed to the public for information about this vehicle, describing it as a potential lead. Some community members believed the truck could have been used in the transportation of Summer. While no definitive link was ever proven, the image of a red pickup became another thread in the theory that her disappearance was tied to a vehicle and a road, not the woods immediately around her home. Law enforcement themselves never fully confirmed the exact route Dawn traveled that day. Hundreds of tips were collected, thousands of leads investigated, but no single map was drawn that connected Dawn's movements with Summer's disappearance. Children subdued, then Dawn's declaration that Summer would never be found reads almost like the final chapter to a story already written. Yet, fairness demands caution. Remarks in interviews are often clipped, misquoted, or presented without full context. Dawn might have been echoing what he felt investigators were implying, that the landscape was too vast, the terrain too unforgiving, to guarantee a discovery. He might have been speaking not from knowledge but from fear, trying to steel himself for a grim possibility. Without the full transcript and tone of the conversation, there remains the chance that his words have been amplified or misinterpreted. Even so, the impact of that single sentence cannot be overstated. For the online community following the case, it became a symbol. Clips of Dawn saying, "Never be found," were replayed, dissected, and shared. The phrase crystallized into a shorthand for guilt, a banner under which theories were built. Whether or not he meant it as a factual statement, it carried the weight of finality. Ultimately, Dawn's statement is not proof of action, but it is a mirror reflecting his state of mind. For some, it is the voice of a father broken by despair. For others, it is the voice of a man who knew more than he should. The truth lies in the interpretation, and interpretation is all investigators have until.
And it's also a phrase that was repeated by Crispy Proudfoot, who said that the Sebastian case is going to be one that will be studied for years. Sebastian will not be found. He says along those lines. I didn't hear the comment, so I'm just going on hearsay. But there's so many similarities to the Summer Wells case and the Sebastian Rogers case that it's not even funny. Okay, let's move down here. See what this new one has to say.
When a child disappears, hope lingers on the possibility of rescue. But as years pass, the grim focus of investigators inevitably shifts from search to recovery, from the dream of reunion to the possibility of uncovering remains. For Summer Wells, if human remains are one day discovered in the hills or creeks around Beach Creek, the question will not simply be where she was found, but whether her discovery can finally lead to justice. Forensic science is powerful, but it is also bound by the limitations of time and environment. In the wooded valleys of Tennessee, a body left exposed to the elements undergoes rapid transformation. Within weeks, decomposition can strip away crucial evidence. Rain, humidity, and wildlife all conspire to erase the marks of violence. A shallow burial delays but does not prevent these processes, and water accelerates them further, scattering tissue and diluting traces. Even in the best conditions, identifying the precise cause of death becomes more difficult with each passing month. In Summer's case, years have already slipped away, increasing the likelihood that only skeletal remains would remain. From a legal perspective, that presents formidable challenges. To secure a conviction, prosecutors do not need to prove innocence or guilt in the abstract. They must persuade a jury that the evidence points to one conclusion beyond reasonable doubt. For a homicide case, that generally requires establishing two pillars. First, that a crime took place, and second, that the accused can be tied directly to it. Without both, trials collapse. Proving a crime requires more than showing a child is deceased. Investigators must demonstrate how it happened, whether through violent force, suffocation, drowning, or another fatal act. When soft tissue is long gone, that proof must be sought in the bones, fractures, cut marks, or blunt trauma etched into the skeleton. But even then, not all injuries leave permanent traces. Strangulation, for example, often leaves no skeletal sign, especially in a child, without a clear pattern. The defense can argue that death resulted from an accident or from circumstances that cannot be proven criminal. The second pillar, linking the suspect, demands physical evidence that places them in contact with the remains. That might include DNA under fingernails, impressions of footwear in surrounding soil, fibers embedded in clothing, or residues from tools that match those owned by the accused. But such links are fragile. Exposure to weather degrades DNA, clothing fades and rots, fibers disintegrate. Even when items survive, defense attorneys can argue that transfer occurred in ordinary family life rather than during a crime. For example, if Dawn or Candace's DNA is found on Summer's clothing, that proves little on its own, since they lived together. Prosecutors need something more distinctive: blood traces that do not match innocent contact, or tool marks that directly connect to equipment in the family's possession. The complications are amplified if the body was ever moved. Relocation scatters the timeline, mixing soils and confusing insect activity that might otherwise help determine when death occurred. If remains were partially burned, the heat could erase both DNA and bone detail. If heavy equipment was used to crush or conceal the body, fractures might be indistinguishable from post-mortem damage. Each of these variables erodes the clarity of the evidence, providing the defense with avenues to sow doubt. There are, however, scenarios where even long-delayed discoveries can be decisive. If skeletal remains show sharp cuts consistent with a blade, or fractures clearly caused by deliberate force, those patterns can point strongly to foul play. If personal items, clothing, toys, or jewelry recognizable as Summers are found in the same location, they anchor the identity of the remains and strengthen the chain of evidence. Even fragments of duct tape, rope, or plastic sheeting can provide forensic traces linking back to suspects. In other cases, soil samples beneath a burial have preserved bodily fluids long after other tissues were gone, providing DNA that withstood years underground. The gold standard for prosecutors would be a combination: skeletal injuries showing violence, personal items belonging to Summer, and foreign DNA or trace evidence linking a suspect directly to the site. That kind of trifecta can transform speculation into proof. But absent one of those elements, the prosecution's case weakens dramatically. This tension between what is required and what is available defines the difficulty of cold cases.
Okay. Now we're going to go. It says, case finally solved. The Summer Wells mystery. The timeline changed everything. True crime. Now, I didn't see in that last one where Candace had admitted to anything. I didn't see that. I don't know why it was in the thumbnail, but I didn't see it anywhere. So let's go. Another one with crime veil.
I called Candace.
Yeah, and with that?
She didn't answer.
Okay.
She called us back. No shed of tears, no nothing. I said, what's wrong? She goes, Summer's missing. I go, what do you mean?
Summer's gone.
Summer's gone. I said, what do
Yeah,
you mean
I
Summer's gone? Like, I started interrogating her. I said, what do you mean? I just seen you guys at 2:30 when you dropped Hunter off. She goes, she's gone. What do you mean she's gone?
Okay. She's gone can mean a multitude of things. That's a phrase used when someone passes away and you're talking to a family member or a loved one or somebody close. She's gone. Or if she left, it would also be proper. If she had been, like maybe she dry drowned, like they said, from the pond. But she's gone could lead to a multiple of things. Not missing. If she just said she's missing, that would mean something different than she's gone. She just gone could mean that she's no longer living.
On June 15, 2021, a 5-year-old girl vanished from her home on a quiet hill in rural Tennessee. Within hours, helicopters circled the dark woods, search dogs traced the creek beds, and hundreds of volunteers called her name Summer. Days turned into months, then years. Investigators followed thousands of leads. They searched forests, wells, and rivers. They questioned neighbors, tracked vehicles, chased rumors, and still nothing. No trail, no witness, no closure. 4 years later, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation still calls it a case outside the norm. From the desperate night she disappeared to the quiet press updates of 2025, this is the timeline of a mystery that refuses to die. A case built on silence, doubt, and one haunting question: how can a child simply vanish and never be found? Was this the act of an outsider? Or did the truth begin and end inside her own home? The morning began like any other in the hills of Beech Creek, quiet, green, and slow. By evening, that stillness would turn into chaos. At 110 Ben Hill Road, a small home perched on a rugged Tennessee hillside, 5-year-old Summer Moon, Utah Wells spent her last known day surrounded by family. The sound of birds, a summer breeze through the trees, her laughter echoing down the slope, everything that seemed ordinary would, by nightfall, become part of one of America's most confounding disappearances. It was June 15, 2021. Her mother, Candace Bly, said the day had been simple: errands, chores, and a visit with Summer's grandmother, often called Grandis. According to Candace, they had been outside together, planting flowers by Grandma's trailer. It was around 5:30 p.m. when she said Summer went inside to play with her brothers. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe less. When Candace walked into the house, Summer was gone. That instant, between the hum of the summer air and the sharp realization that her child was missing.
Okay, the first time I heard that scenario, they were planting cactuses out by Grandma's trailer. And then Candace supposedly walked Summer to the door, let her in the door, told the boys to watch her. Then she went back to her mom's to adjust her knee brace, which took 2 minutes. It couldn't have took any more than 2 minutes. And she went back to the house and wanted to know where Summer was. And the boys said she was down in the basement playing with toys. So Candace went down in the basement and there was no Summer. Then we just heard the scenario that we heard. She was planting flowers. Could have been 5-10 minutes at the most. She went in and there was nobody there. Okay? So there's 2 different scenarios that I've heard, and I don't.
Missing would fracture time for the entire Wells family.
The real reason Korean women are so skinny and how Hollywood celebs secretly are using it. This is the
Candace searched the house, then the basement, calling her daughter's name. She looked around the yard, then down toward the tree line where the path disappeared into the woods. Nothing. She was just here, she said later, her voice trembling through the 911 call. My daughter's gone. She was just here a minute ago. At 6:30 p.m.
Okay, the scenario I heard was that the neighbor had called, or one of their friends had called the law enforcement. It wasn't that Candace had called. Now, it could be Candace calling. I don't know. But here again, she says, my daughter's gone. So she was just here a minute ago at 6:30 p.m. Candace dialed. Okay. If she was alive and then she dry drowned, she could have been gone after that. So
Candace dialed 911. Within minutes, the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office dispatched units to the isolated property. The area was rural and hard to navigate, narrow gravel roads winding through forest, steep slopes, and uneven ground. The first deputies on scene searched the yard, the outbuildings, and the dense brush behind the house. They found no footprints, no signs of a struggle, no trail leading away. By 7 p.m., the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation had been alerted. By 7:30 p.m., the FBI joined the coordination efforts. Within 2 hours, Ben Hill Road, a quiet country lane that rarely saw outsiders, was flooded with emergency vehicles, flashing lights, and the echo of voices calling Summers' name into the dusk. Neighbors stepped outside, stunned. Helicopters began circling overhead, sweeping beams of light across the dark woods. Volunteers from across the county arrived with flashlights, ATVs, and bloodhounds. The search command post was set up near the Beach Creek Volunteer Fire Department. From that moment, the disappearance of one child became a race against time. Deputies and rescue workers fanned out through fields, ravines, and streams. The first K-9 teams arrived that night, dogs trained to detect scent even in difficult terrain. They picked up a trail briefly around the property, but lost it at the edge of the woods. It was as if Summer had evaporated. Her father, Don Wells, returned home from work in shock. That night, he gave his first interview to local reporters, his voice raw and disbelieving. Someone took her. She wouldn't just walk off. She's too young, too afraid of the dark. As darkness fell, the mountain air grew cold and heavy. Search teams used thermal imaging, drones, and floodlights to calm every inch of the nearby hollows. The woods echoed with her name, Summer, Summer. The calls grew softer through the night, swallowed by the wind and the rustling leaves. By midnight, more than 100 people were actively searching. The terrain was brutal, steep slopes, thick undergrowth, and snakes hidden in the brush. Volunteers stumbled, scratched, but refused to stop. A storm threatened in the distance. The sheriff's office advised everyone to check their properties, sheds, crawl spaces, and vehicles. Still, no sign. At dawn, the next day, TBI spokeswoman Leslie Earhart stood before cameras and said the words that would define the case. This case is outside the norm. Every scenario is on the table. In that single sentence, the world shifted from tragedy to mystery. If Summer hadn't wandered off, and no stranger had been seen, then what had happened in that narrow window between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m.? Investigators retraced every minute. They questioned the timeline, when Candace called 911, when Don arrived, when neighbors joined the search. They looked for tire marks, shoe prints, broken branches, any disturbance in the soft soil. There were none. The dogs circled the home again and again, alerting briefly near the basement door but not beyond it. Forensic teams scoured the house, took items for scent samples, photographs, DNA. The result was the same: no clear sign of abduction, no evidence of foul play, and yet no child. In the following 24 hours, over 100 agencies became involved. 1,500 volunteers joined the search over the next 2 weeks. Helicopters, divers, and drones covered more than 5,000 acres of rugged land. Nothing was found, not a piece of clothing, not a footprint, not even a toy. Candace, overwhelmed, gave few statements. Don became the family's voice to the media. He told reporters, "We just want our daughter home. We're broken." But the more he spoke, the more the public began to question. How could a child vanish in daylight, surrounded by family, and leave no trace? That question would haunt every investigator, every neighbor, every person who saw Summer's photo, a smiling blonde girl with bright eyes, barefoot in the grass. As the first week ended, the search turned from rescue to recovery, then from recovery to suspicion. The property was searched multiple times, ponds drained, wells examined. Yet the more the police looked, the less sense it made. She hadn't wandered off far enough to vanish completely. No vehicle had been seen. No scream had been heard. It was an impossible disappearance. In the following days, the TBI tip line flooded with calls, more than 200 in the first 72 hours. Everyone was logged, cross-checked, and exhausted. The investigation expanded to surrounding counties. Agents visited homes, interviewed anyone who had been on Ben Hill Road that day. Still, the timeline never changed. Summer was alive at 5:30 p.m. By 6:30 p.m. she was gone. The family home, once filled with children's laughter, became a crime scene wrapped in silence. Television crews parked along the gravel road. Reporters whispered through fences. Posters with her face began to appear on store windows across Tennessee. Missing, Summer Moon, Utah Wells, age 5. Inside the small Beach Creek community, fear spread faster than the news itself. Parents watched their children closer. People locked their doors for the first time in years. And in the house on the hill, the Wells family waited for an answer that never came. By the end of June, the official search had already become one of the largest in Tennessee's history. Still, nothing. No body, no clue, no goodbye. The TBI continued to process tips, field interviews, and release small updates to the media, each one shorter than the last. Search efforts continue. No significant developments. Still an active investigation. Somewhere between those lines, hope began to fade. For those who were there that first night, the memories remain vivid. The flashing red lights through the trees, the smell of for. As the summer heat faded into the cool air of Tennessee's autumn, the search for Summer Wells began to change shape. What had started as a desperate rescue effort was slowly becoming something else, a painstaking criminal investigation built on fragments of time, missing minutes, and too many unanswered questions. The helicopters were gone now. The drones were silent. The volunteers had returned home. In their place came the investigators, armed with not shovels and flashlights, but with timelines, reports, and suspicions. By September 2021, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was working around the clock to reconstruct the final known moments of June 15th, the day Summer vanished. Agents mapped out the family's movements down to the minute, questioning every statement that didn't align perfectly. When had Candace last seen her daughter? What exactly had Candace, the grandmother, been doing near the trailer that afternoon? How long did it take Candace to notice Summer was gone? The details, once small, were now enormous. Each second mattered. Each word could shift the direction of the case. Investigators revisited the home at 110 Ben Hill Road, this time with forensic specialists and behavioral experts from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. The property was sealed again, photographed, measured, and examined under ultraviolet light. Search warrants were executed quietly, away from the cameras that still camped along the narrow gravel road. Officers carried out computers, cell phones, and pieces of evidence sealed in brown paper bags. They returned multiple times over the next few months, digging deeper into the digital and emotional landscape of the Wells family. It was during this period that the public first heard the recorded 911 call placed by Candace on June 15th. The voice on the recording was trembling, panicked, and full of disbelief. "My daughter's gone. She was just here." The call lasted less than 2 minutes, but investigators dissected every second of it. They compared tone, timing, and responses to standard behavioral patterns in missing child cases. Nothing in the call could be used as proof of guilt, but it didn't erase doubt either. The Wells home, once the heart of the search effort, now stood as the focal point of suspicion. Detectives conducted multiple interviews with Dawn and Candace Wells, noting that while both continued to cooperate, inconsistencies were beginning to surface. Candace's timeline didn't always match her mother's. The sequence of errands, the moment they returned home, the description of Summer's last movements, all seemed to shift slightly between tellings. Neighbors were interviewed again. Surveillance footage from nearby roads and businesses was reviewed for the 100th time. Cell tower pings were analyzed, showing who was where during those crucial hours. FBI analysts traced phone records, searching for unusual calls or messages. Nothing concrete surfaced, but the effort revealed something more subtle, a pattern of chaos and inconsistency within the family itself. By the end of 2021, the tone of law enforcement had shifted. The TBI released a short but telling statement. "While the family remains cooperative, no one has been ruled out." It was a phrase chosen carefully, but its implications were explosive. The once sympathetic public began to fracture. Online forums turned from empathy to accusation. By the start of 2022, the case of Summer Wells had shifted from rescue to reckoning. The once frenzied search through the hills of Beach Creek was over, but the scrutiny surrounding her family had only intensified. The world no longer asked, "Where is Summer?" It began to ask, "Who is responsible?" In February 2022, the focus turned sharply towards Summer's father. Don Wells was arrested and later pleaded guilty to driving under the influence, a violation of his probation on earlier charges. Local court filings and coverage from Fox Chattanooga confirmed he was sentenced to 180 days in jail. The image of him in handcuffs, tired and gaunt, flashed across Tennessee newsrooms. The public that once sympathized with his desperation now saw something different: instability, perhaps guilt, perhaps grief turned destructive. While Don served his sentence, Candace Bly, Summer's mother, disappeared from public view. She deactivated her social media accounts, stopped giving interviews, and retreated to the quiet isolation of Ben Hill Road. Those who had followed the story closely noticed the silence immediately. Online forums filled the void with speculation. Some claimed she had broken down emotionally. Others insisted she was hiding something. Whatever the truth, her absence became fuel for the internet's ever-turning rumor mill. At the same time, the Department of Children's Services confirmed that the Wells' remaining children had been removed from the home. Court documents cited safety concerns and unfit living conditions. Local reporters at WJHL and Kingsport Times News described the property as cluttered and in poor condition, a far cry from the idyllic rural image first painted during the search. What began as a missing child investigation was now unraveling into a broader look at a family in crisis. Inside the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, agents continued their methodical work. Thousands of leads had been processed since June 2021, but nearly all had led to dead ends. In a series of public statements through 2022, spokesperson Leslie Earhart maintained a careful tone. This remains an active investigation. No one has been ruled out. Behind those words, investigators were still comparing digital data, re-interviewing witnesses, and analyzing inconsistencies in the family's timeline. But publicly, the silence was deafening. By mid-2022, the Federal Bureau of Investigation began scaling back its role. The agency's specialized child abduction rapid deployment team, which had assisted since the first days of the Amber Alert, gradually withdrew, leaving the TBI and Hawkins County Sheriff's Office as the primary agencies. By June 15, 2023, the second anniversary of Summer's disappearance, the TBI told WCYB News there was no new information to publicly provide, though agents continued to. By the start of 2023, the search for Summer Wells no longer looked like an investigation. It looked like a memory. The command posts were gone, the maps were rolled up, and the bright orange ribbons that once marked search zones had faded to pale yellow, flapping quietly in the wind. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation still listed her case as open and active, but those words had become more ceremonial than hopeful, an official phrase repeated every few months, like a candle relit out of duty rather than belief. There were no more helicopters in the sky above Beach Creek, no more lines of volunteers sweeping through the fields. The TBI newsroom occasionally posted a short update. The investigation remains active. Agents continue to follow all credible leads. Each message was nearly identical to the one before it, sterile and careful, almost robotic in tone. For the families and followers who still watched, those words were a reminder not of progress, but of time passing, month after month, with nothing new to say. The FBI by now was no longer directly involved. Their field agents had withdrawn the previous year, leaving the TBI and the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office to manage what had effectively become a cold case without the label. The sheriff gave a rare interview in late 2023, his voice tired, his phrasing deliberate. "We're still working it, but there's no timetable. We haven't given up." Behind him, the hills of Ben Hill Road looked the same as they always had, green, quiet, indifferent. The Wells family, broken and weary, tried to reclaim a kind of normal. Dawn and Candace began appearing on small podcasts and local live streams, sometimes together, sometimes separately. Their tone was different now, less defensive, more desperate. Dawn spoke about faith, forgiveness, and the hope that Summer was with God. Candace mostly listened, her voice faint when she spoke at all. In one emotional broadcast, Dawn's voice cracked as he said, "People think we stopped looking. We never did. We just have nowhere left to look." For the first time since 2021,
to the best of my knowledge, they never went out looking. Other people did.
The storm of rumors on social media, all of it had subsided, leaving behind a kind of stillness that felt heavier than ever. It was the same quiet that had blanketed Beach Creek since 2021, but this time it carried the weight of 4 birthdays, 4 Christmases, and 4 years without answers. On August 13, 2025, the same day that the New Age progression image was released, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued an updated statement. It was clear, professional, and deeply disappointing. The disappearance of Summer Wells remains an active and open investigation. No arrests have been made. We continue to pursue any and all credible leads. Spokesperson Leslie Earhart, who had become the steady voice of the case, emphasized again that agents follow every tip, no matter how small. Her words were calm, deliberate, but they could not disguise the emptiness behind them. Reporters pressed the TBI for updates, for new theories, for anything that might reignite public faith. But there was nothing new to give. We continue to work this case every day, Earhart said in an interview with WJHL. But we can't speculate. We can't guess. We need facts, and facts are what we don't have. That simple sentence captured the heart of the tragedy, a vast investigation with nothing to hold on to. Behind the official silence, the reason was painfully clear to investigators. The terrain around Ben Hill Road had always been the enemy. Steep ridges, underground caves, sinkholes, dense thickets, and endless acres of private property made it nearly impossible to cover every inch. Even with drones and dogs, parts of those hills could swallow anything without a trace. Add to that the time, over 4 years of rain, erosion, and wildlife, and any physical clue that might once have existed was long gone. The second problem was the timeline. The first critical hours after Summer vanished had been chaotic. Conflicting accounts, delayed calls, and overlapping search efforts blurred the early evidence. No one could say for certain how long she had been missing before the first 911 call, or whether her disappearance had been a matter of minutes or something longer. That uncertainty, baked into the case from the very beginning, had poisoned every lead that followed. By 2025, investigators privately admitted what the public already suspected. The odds of finding new physical evidence were almost non-existent. But no one was willing to close the case, not officially, not emotionally. To close it would mean accepting that a 5-year-old girl had simply vanished, leaving no trace of her existence. And that was something no one could bear to write on paper. When the TBI was asked if there were any persons of interest, Earhart replied with the same phrase she had repeated since 2021, "No one has been ruled out." The words, meant to sound neutral, now carried the faint chill of finality. After 4 years, no one ruled out, no longer meant, we're still investigating. It meant, we still don't know. The reality was cruel in its simplicity: no suspects, no witnesses, no evidence, no closure. And yet, despite the exhaustion of officials and the collapse of national media interest, a small current of humanity refused to fade. In early October 2025, the internet once again flickered with light, not from sensational rumors or conspiracies this time, but from quiet acts of remembrance. On the social media platform X, users began posting tributes under the hashtag #FindSummerWells. Some were familiar names, longtime advocates who had kept the case alive since 2021. One user, Breen Nabana 80, posted on October 8, 2025, "She would be 9 now. I still have her photo on my fridge. She's everyone's daughter, the one we couldn't save." Another, Letters to Esme, wrote a simple, heartbreaking line: "Every night, I still check the news, hoping. Just in case." These weren't influencers or journalists, just ordinary people who couldn't let go. Across Hawkins County, there were still physical reminders too. Outside a small Baptist church near Rogersville, a wooden cross still stood by the roadside, its paint faded, the ribbons bleached by sun and rain. Every few months, someone replaced the flowers beneath it. No one ever said who. On the anniversary of her disappearance, a small group of locals gathered again at dusk. There were no television cameras this time, just a circle of neighbors, holding candles and singing softly. One woman who attended the vigil told Kinsport Times News, "It's not just about finding her anymore. It's about remembering her. She's part of this place now. She always will be." Her words captured what law enforcement reports could not, that Summer Wells had transcended the boundaries of the case. She had become something larger, a symbol of innocence lost, of unanswered prayers, and of the fragile persistence of hope. The online tributes continued to grow. Photos of children holding candles, drawings made by students, even pets wearing yellow ribbons began to appear under the hashtag. People from outside Tennessee, Canada, Australia, Brazil left messages of solidarity. They'd never met her, but they felt connected to the story. One viral post read, "4 birthdays have passed, but the world still whispers her name." Even as the investigation froze in place, these small acts of remembrance kept it alive. And in that persistence lay a quiet kind of resistance, a refusal to let the case fade completely into darkness. A retired volunteer who had helped in the 2021 search summed it up best. "The police have stopped walking the hills, but the people haven't stopped carrying her in their hearts. That's what keeps her alive." When the world stopped searching, ordinary people kept the light on. And so, in the late autumn of 2025, as Tennessee's trees turned red and gold, Beech Creek once again grew still. The hills looked the same as they had 4 years before, but something invisible had changed. The case was cold now, colder than the mountain air, but the memory of a barefoot little girl, smiling in a pink shirt, continued to flicker in the minds of thousands. 4 birthdays had come and gone, no arrests, no evidence, no closure. Yet somehow, against every odd, her name still glowed softly in the dark, not as a mystery anymore, but as a reminder that truth, no matter how buried, deserves to be remembered. 4 years and 5 months since that June evening, the hills of Beech Creek stand unchanged, quiet, green, and endless. Yet for everyone who followed the story of Summer Wells, the silence no longer feels like peace. It feels like a question that will not die. By the end of 2025, even as the official investigation remains open, it has become clear that this case will be remembered not only for its mystery, but for what it taught us about time, about systems, and about how fragile the line between safety and tragedy can be. The first lesson is one that investigators have repeated again and again. The first hours matter. Every minute after a child vanishes is a race against disappearance itself. Experts now use the Wells case as a painful reminder of how crucial the early response window truly is. When timelines blur, when calls are delayed, when statements conflict, those first golden hours slip away forever. If anything good can come from Summer's story, it is the lesson that in every missing child report, urgency must override hesitation. Authorities must act fast, coordinate faster, and treat every call as the one that might still end in rescue. The second lesson lies deeper, in the system meant to protect children before tragedy happens. The Department of Children's Services was already familiar with the Wells family before June 2021. Their files, as reported by local outlets like Kingsport Times, news revealed years of instability, poverty, and alleged neglect. After Summer's disappearance, her brothers were removed from the home, but by then, it was too late for her. It raised a haunting question that Tennessee lawmakers still debate today. Could stronger oversight, earlier intervention, or more resources have changed the outcome? In the wake of Summer's case, child advocacy groups across Tennessee renewed their push for reform. They called for more training for social workers, better mental health resources for families at risk, and stricter follow-up on households flagged by DCS. We can't keep waiting until a child is missing to start caring, one advocate told WJHL during an October 2025 interview. Her words cut through the air like truth wrapped in exhaustion. The third lesson is one that reaches beyond agencies. It speaks directly to parents, especially those in isolated or rural areas. Safety cannot be assumed just because the world feels familiar. Summer disappeared not from a busy street or a crowded store, but from her own yard, in daylight, within sight of her home. For many who live in quiet communities, her story shattered the illusion that small towns and back roads are automatically safe. In 2025, police departments and schools across Tennessee launched new awareness campaigns, urging parents to teach children how to respond to danger, how to call for help, and how to never walk off alone, no matter how safe home feels. These lessons about urgency, protection, and awareness have become the fragile legacy of a little girl who never got to turn 10. They are lessons written not in textbooks but in grief, And though they cannot bring her back, they might save the next child whose name we do not yet know. As the year closes, the TBI continues to remind the public that the case remains open, that tips still matter, that silence is the enemy of truth. Their hotline, 1-800-TBI-FIND, and the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office number 423-272-7121, are repeated at the end of every update, every post, every mention of her name. Agents still say the same words they said in 2020.
Okay. We still haven't. What I'm learning is this content creator, Crime Veil, knew 2025 update, 5 theories that could finally explain what happened to Summer Wells. We've heard all those already, so I'm not going to go through this. But he said the case was solved on 2 different ones of them, yet we didn't hear how it was solved. He just kept saying it hasn't been solved. Now, I heard months and months ago that they had found remains about a mile away from the house out in the woods that they thought might have been Summer, and they thought was placed there after all the searches. But I never heard anything more about it. They said it could be weeks before we find out anything from autopsy or anything like that. So I still don't know about that. If there's anybody in Tennessee or who knows how to do a FOIA to find out if there's any information, please let me know. Because I don't know how to do a FOIA to find out. So hopefully somebody soon will find out the results of that autopsy, and we can find out if the remains were poor little Summer Wells. Then there's been reports that Dawn's been upset saying Candace sold Summer. I don't know what happened to Summer. I really don't. I wish I'd lived closer to Tennessee so I could go find out what I could find out. But I don't know. Anyway, thank you for putting up with me for the last hour and a half. 4:35, 30, 2.5 hours. Thank you. I'll see what I can find to research tomorrow. My husband goes back to work tomorrow. Next week is my MRI. So we'll see what's going on. Thank you for being here. Please hit that thumbs up on your way out. Do something nice for someone, even if it's be the reason they smile, and search for crime.